Well, 24 hours after the shooting of the last video, detailing what I found in that, we are actually now going to get started and hopefully finished tonight fixing that and doing it right. Um, so on the table over here is pretty much the basics of what you're going to need to do this type of a repair or restoration. Uh, There is one particular tool that you will probably also need, and that is a good digital multimeter. I actually have my other one inside. I forgot to grab it, so I will grab it here shortly. And basically need one to test continuity, one that has an audible signal preferred to be able to test continuity, and I'll show you that when we get to that stage with that. But you definitely gonna need a good multimeter to test resistance, which is testing continuity, or something like that. I'll show you how to work it. And like I detailed in my last video, contact cleaner is definitely something you're gonna need, and we're gonna use that to clean the insides of that out, of all these, before I put the bulbs back in. I figured while we're at it, we might as well clean them. They were good. They don't show any signs of melting or discoloration, anything of that nature. They probably just need a good cleaning. Next to that is a good thing, a shrink tube. I've got long lengths of it because I'm going to try something when it comes to looming, and I figured these long lengths of shrink tube will probably come in handy. Not to mention you can cut custom lengths as needed compared to these kits here that you can buy at your local auto parts store. Again, Dorman, there's the part number. Most, if not all, auto parts stores will have something like this. I know the big chain stores do. And these are just basically custom, or not custom, but set lengths of shrink tubing. So that's where those come in handy if you want something longer or shorter than these. I mean, these, if you want them shorter, you can cut them. But those give you the ability to cut to whatever length you need and shrink. Same with these. This one you can get at Harbor Freight. And then the next one is you can get a kit like this. This I got at Harbor Freight, and most, not all auto parts stores will have something like this as well, where it's just a kit of all these different connectors. And you can, my opinion, to do these right, is to strip off these colored insulation, crimp them, and then solder them, and then put shrink tube over that. Alright, the plastic insulation, obviously, is just not real good. And then you will need some split loom. They come in different varieties, from this plastic corrugated stuff, which is the most common and the cheapest you can get. This is the 3/8, there's the part number. You know, to cover things up, some zip ties. And then you'll need a good soldering iron. This is an electric one I bought a while back, haven't used it yet. So you guys will be seeing me use this one for the first time, but a decent soldering iron. And some solder. So most of the stuff you get is lead-free. Rosin core is a good one. And it's also a good handy thing to have around is a can of flux. You definitely want some flux paste. This little guy here is a tool that I made. I actually got this idea off of watching Eric the Car Guy. One of his early videos, you know, from years ago, almost, you know, between 8 and 10 years or so ago, I could be wrong, but it was around that time he shows how you make this. And this is basically just the solid household copper wire. Alright, so it's not the stranded stuff that you see there. This is that solid stuff that you see behind in your walls. And I just cut a length, wrapped it around one loop around a mandrel, and then stripped the insulation off and soldered these alligator clips on. And what it does is I can put the wires, both ends of the wire, with the area I'm soldering right here, and it holds them in place while I'm able to use my other hand to hold the solder. I'll show you how to use that too. Scotch-Brite pad, be able to get into the contact and get into those sockets and be able to clean those out and rough them up, make them look good. Clean them. And then what I went over last night were these weatherproof terminals. These are ones that I found from a couple previous projects I've done. And these are the larger 10 to 12 gauge, And it says the same thing on the back. Heat shrinkable insulation provides weatherproof seal. So these are the type I would recommend. I mean, you could use those and shrink tube them, and it ultimately does the same thing. Or you can get these where it has it all in one. And then last but not least, when it comes to this type of work, is you want replacement wiring. And I think most of the wiring on that harness is 16 gauge, so I just went with 16 gauge. Seems to be the more common one. I have seen 18 gauge wire in there. And looking at that stuff, that looks to be about 16 gauge. So I got brown, yellow, black, and green in 16 gauge, and then I also have black 18 gauge, yellow and red 18 gauge, and then a little bit of blue 16 gauge. Alright, so, but most of the colors that are there are those four: black, red, or black, yellow, green, brown. So to be able to fix that, and you can get other such stuff that I haven't detailed in this video or in this segment, but this is just the bare basics. You're gonna need a good set of dikes, wire cutters. You'll need a set of strippers, crimpers, things like that. And so without further ado, I'll get this all cleaned off and we'll get started. Alright, so what was a couple minutes for me is a quick second for you, but this is the multimeter I got, and the setting, that's the setting you want to use for the audible signal. And I am working outside on my patio, and it is going to be thunderstorming while making this video, so I just saw some lightning, so bear with me. But see how it's making that noise when I touch them together? That's the noise you want to hear for good continuity. So that's why having a multimeter with this function comes in handy, because then you don't have to measure resistance, because good resistance values change by the length of the wire. The longer the wire, the difference in resistance will have for a good continuity. Correct me, for those of you guys who know more about this, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, good resistance is less than a half an ohm. Alright, I'm not sure how that changes in relation to the length of the wire, whether it gets bigger when it gets shorter or gets smaller, I don't know, but I just know that magic number you're looking for is a half an ohm of resistance, and I know that somehow will change somehow, you know, by longer or shortened length, by the length of the wire, sorry. So then the other thing is, it's just a good set of wire cutters, side cutters, dikes. I actually prefer these type of wire strippers better, as opposed to the pliers type where you open it up, stick them and crimp it down, and then you pull on it. I like these better. It does a lot better. These are probably between $10 to $20 at your local auto parts store. I think these ones I got from Harbor Freight for probably right around 10 bucks. All right. But I know I have these at my work, and I think they're between $10 to $20. I could be wrong, so I'll just say probably right around 15-ish. And then these guys here I got from my work. These are about probably closer to 30. I could be wrong depending on your area, but I like these guys a lot better when it comes to the crimp style terminals that you would use. It does a lot better of a crimp. It does have the three different settings: red, blue, and yellow, and it ratchets, so you can literally put the terminal in and ratchet it until it stops, stick the wire in, hold it, and then crimp it just like that, and you're not having to fumble with them. That's why I like these better. Harbor Freight's also got these for a little bit cheaper than the auto parts stores, but again, this is what I got from my work, and I've used these quite a bit on a lot of my electrical projects, especially on the Chevy, and I love them. They work great. And that's it for the tools that you will need, the basic tools you will need to complete this job. So I'm going to clean the table off of all non-essentials, and we're going to get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, I got myself set up. I'm pretty sure that that's not how it's supposed to go, but look at what I got to work with right here. Yeah, I can smell it. It's heating up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take care of this rusted out spade right here. So I'm just going to clip it right there. Sorry, trying to deal with this with one hand. So I'm just going to clip it off. If I can get my phone to focus, I'm just going to clip it off right there, just before the terminals right there, so I can so I'm not cutting out a long length of wire. Alright, so shrink tube on, ends cut, stripped, both of them. We're now ready to commence the soldering. Because I don't have a tripod or anything to set my camera on, I'm going to have to kind of walk you guys through this, but I've already put a little bit of flux, that stuff right there, this. I've already put a little bit on the joint, and as you can tell, I've got my fancy little holder tool here holding those in place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the iron and I'm just going to heat this wire up, and the flux is going to allow the solder to flow into the joint. And make sure you keep your shrink tube away from the heat so it doesn't shrink itself down while you're trying to solder. Well, I can tell you what, it has been a while since I have soldered last, and that don't look good, but I've done a tug test on it and it's not coming apart, so we'll just go from there. And to test your work, I have one lead hooked up right there, see, using my fancy little tool, and then this is the ground. And as you can hear, good audible tone, and there's the reading. And I actually have the tool connected on this side going to the socket side of the solder, because electricity is going to go from, so this is as far downstream as I can get, so I put it on the downstream side of the solder, not on the upstream side, and I got a good connection. As of now, I put the shrink tube on. You can use a heat gun, butane torch. I use that type of a torch, my trusty Zippo. You can even use a Bic lighter to do this, and that is how you do a proper electrical repair. Alright, so now I've already begun to start looming this by adding zip ties every so often. Another thing that I also just did was I ran a piece of shrink tube up here to cover that joint. Doing the test on this repair job on the yellow wire, going to ground and completing the circuit, and I got a good strong tone. Alright, I'm good that I don't think I have to redo this. And then getting a closer look at it, it definitely looked factory, looked a little corroded, so I cleaned it up and ran some shrink tube over it and kind of help protect it. But yeah, I've already got it loomed all the way up to the junction where I got that part that goes up to the front and splits off to the two sides. So now I'm going to work on the passenger side, getting it done, and then I'm going to split loom all this after zip tying it up, and then we will end with getting this piece all taken care of. Alright, so I fixed the ground on the passenger side. Now, I think I made a mistake when buying my solder, and I bought this stuff, but it says gold solder on it, and one thing I'm finding is I cannot get this stuff to stick to the wire no matter how hard I try. I put flux on it and the flux burns and spreads through the wire, but I can't, this stuff just globs up on the tip of the wire here, and I can't get it. I mean look at all that. That's just from it just dripping off and rolling off the copper. So I'm thinking I got the wrong solder, and like I said, where I'm in time restraints right now, I have to get this done. I resorted to using a large gauge butt connector, and what I was going to try to slip this piece of shrink tube all the way over it, but I couldn't get it past this far, so I at least shrinked it down right here knowing that that's going to be the furthest point out, or pointing towards the point of where we're getting a lot of moisture. And I'll just wrap the rest of this in wire tape for now. Proper way to do it. I know this isn't what I said I was going to set out to do. I wanted to solder this, but I can't wait till tomorrow to get the proper solder. So I have to get this done tonight. So I just went with this, and then this is that other ground connection I went through in that was non-existent on the side. So I'm going to have this wiring harness grounded on both sides as opposed to just the one. And just to kind of give you guys a test, show that this connection's good. That's a power wire, and that's a ground. See? I got a good tone, so that's all that matters. I got continuity, which means I should have electricity path. That means I should have a good path to ground there. So with that done, I'm going to loom this side up, just like I did the other side, and go to the next step. Because I made a mistake in getting the wrong solder, or I'm just not being smart enough to solder, though I've soldered before, and I'm quite good at it. I just think I bought the wrong solder. So I've taken one of these non-insulated butt connectors for 18 to 22 gauge, because I don't have any weatherproof ones. So I'm going to make a weatherproof one by simply crimping that on and taking a piece of shrink tube that is just barely big enough to fit over and shrink it down. What is that saying? There's more than one way to skin a cat. See, by making it come out just long enough, I was actually able to shrink it down to, well, if my phone would focus, to the actual size of the wire. And I've got plenty of distance past it. Granted, not quite equal. One side's a little longer than the other, but I am out past the butt connector enough that I don't think I'll get any moisture intrusion or anything up into this area on this wire. We'll just see how that works. Alright, so testing to see if that actually works. I've got my red lead hooked to the black lead. And let's see if I can't show you. So when you're looking at this, you got focus. There we go. You got a metal ring around the outside, and then you got those two little tabs down at the bottom. Alright. I'm going to see if I can't show you. When we touch the metal ring, on the outside, on the top, we got good tone, and it's showing some resistance, but we got continuity. And then we're going to go down at the bottom, and it's going to be that one on the bottom closest to my thumb that's going to give us the tone. See, the one on top isn't giving me a tone. And it looks like that's the wire I probably just repaired, but it's not giving me a tone. So I'm assuming the top one is probably the ground, and I'd be right. And the other one's the brown. Green is not giving me a tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the other set of light bulbs on the driver's side and see if it does the same thing to me there. And it's the same thing for both sides, where the colored wire, in this case the green wire, dark green, and on the other side it'd be the yellow wire, aren't giving me a tone where the other ones are. So we'll just have to do some more testing and see if these repairs actually worked, or if I'm going to have to tear back into this. Stay tuned. Alright, so I've got the two branch offs, left and right side, zip tied together all the way up to the junction. So all that down there, zip tied, ready to be split loomed, wrapped and split loomed. So now I'm going to concentrate my efforts on this. And after closer inspection, each and every one of these old butt connectors, including these ones up here, alright, except that one, these are weatherproof connectors, because I actually just used my lighter and shrank these things down. So whoever put these on didn't bother to shrink them down, or were too stupid to read the package when they bought them. Either which way, I mean, this is... How do you not, for one, know what you're getting when you go to the store and buy it? Two, how do you not pay attention to the labels? Then again, this is people we're talking about here. All right, and then in that case, as if this is what you bought, how did you even forget to shrink these down? So I've pretty much figured out the whole wiring thing. Okay. So the white on this, even though it says it's a ground, I'm actually not going to be using it for a ground because the lights are grounded through a separate ground. So this is actually going to tie into the light green wire for my reverse lights. The dark green is one side turn signal and the yellow is the other side turn signal. And then just like this says, the brown is my running lights. And then the last light obviously is the white, and that will be tied into the light green, which will be my reverse lights. So with this pretty much being labeled, I'm going to cut this thing in half and strip those wires and clean this clusterfuck up. Yeah. And then I'm gonna tie this into this harness somehow. So, and if you look real closely, it's got two sets of wires. One yellow, two brown, two dark green, and then this white ties into the yellow up here. But I'm going to go off of the wires down here. I'm going to take this all apart and get this out of this loom here, separate these wires, and I'm just going to tie all these wires in down here into one side of this. So what'll be probably a second to you will probably be quite a while for me, so we'll see you when I'm done. Sucks that I can't actually set this up and film me doing the work, and that's the whole point of my channel, is to show the work and not just do snippets of this is what it was like before and this is what it's like after type thing. I just wish I can show you guys the work, but working with a cell phone and only two hands because I'm by myself, this is pretty much what I'm resorted to. But the quality of my videos will get better. But we'll see how well this works. Okay, reverse lights. The two light green wires into one, connected to the white. Sorry about the shady camera work again. But listen for the tone, and we have ourselves continuity. Means we got a complete circuit. So, one thing I will say, I have used these weatherproof connectors in the past, and one of the problems I find with them is no matter what type of crimpers you use, even these little sons of bitches, even on the red setting, the smallest setting, they don't seem to crimp tight enough to get a good strong connection. And when I do the pull test, they come up right out. So I'm going to plan Q. And that is, I'm going to use these non-weatherproof connectors, the cheap Harbor Freight ones, because they seem to be having better luck with those. And I'm just going to put some shrink tube around them and shrink it down that way to make a weatherproof connection. Like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And there's more than one way around a proper electrical repair. But there's also plenty of wrong and dangerous ways to do it. So I'm just showing you some other methods that I use in case you don't have the ability to get a lot of the good stuff, good tools, solder, things like that, or especially if you're not good with soldering, apparently like myself, you can go this route. And just going to put some shrink tube over it like that, and we'll move on to the next. Alright, so 26 minutes into the video, and I actually now have my pigtail, which, yes, is a 4-pin flat trailer. I showed you that in the last video. Wired in, and with some good news. I have my ground connected. And we're going to take my positive and reverse lights. That's a good reading. Running lights. Turn signal 1, probably left. Turn signal 2, right. And there you go. So all 4 light circuits show good continuity. And so now the next thing we're going to do is clean off the table. It looks like some of that stuff I didn't actually use, such as the wire over there. I only used a small chunk of the black to make the other ground. And so now what we're going to do is I'll worry about cleaning the contacts once I get it installed back into the truck, because it could potentially dirty them up again while installing, so I'll wait till they're in the truck ready to rock and roll. But what I wanted to do was solder all these connections together. I even had my soldering iron, my brand new one, in the package. I just pulled it out, first time using it tonight, and like I said, to recap, I think I fucked it up and bought the wrong solder. So, but these repairs will have to do now to kind of recap. I did use 2 of the weatherproof connectors, but on the pigtail side, on the this side of it, and then the other 2 I used the smaller red butt connectors with some shrink tube, and those 2 actually shrunk down just fine. They look really good. They're right up against there. There's no gaps from what I can see. It looks like there might be some in the on this side, no, because that's actually heavier gauge wire. That's 16 gauge wire, where this down here is 18 gauge. And I know I said in the last video, thicker gauge wire, thinner gauge wire, not such a good idea. But at this point, this is all I got to work with. All right, I wasn't about to spend $70 on the proper connector for this, and I'm not going to over-engineer this thing. This is as simple as it gets at this stage, at least for me. But instead of just using the regular butt connectors and calling it a day, like I said, I did add some shrink tube to these connectors to help kind of give them a chance of keeping from corroding and coming apart on me, and hopefully the shrink tube grips it enough that these connections won't come apart. So looks like I did miss a little bit of the yellow right here, so we'll just see if we can shrink that back down. There we go. That's much better. Again, sorry about the shitty camera work. My cell phone. You guys will hear me repeat that over and over again until I get a better camera set up. But yeah, unlike what was on there before, I think this is a lot better and in my opinion a lot safer than what was previously done. And it's a lot better. The one thing I did find is the license plate light was actually tied in up here. Now, let me grab the original connector, and I shaved probably about a good foot of wire out of this, so I might have to do some extending on the truck side, but we won't do that. I won't find that out until I get up under there and actually look to see if I have to or not. I probably will, though. But the license plate light was tied in right here. Why it was done like this, I don't know, for the simple reason of these two brown wires. Right? This whole cluster right here, it looks like a ground. This comes off of this, reaches over here, and then continues on to one side and to the other. The brown wire is the running lights. And what turns on with your running lights? Your license plate light. I think that's what this lead is for. This isn't a ground. Though it is set up like a ground, but it is not a ground. Well, because there is power going to it, what I am going to do is I'm going to isolate these, and then I'm going to wrap that. Unfortunately, I can't get any shrink tube around it, but I am going to take and wrap that in some wire tape before looming this up so this connection is separated. But that's what that's for. That's for the license plate. It don't take a rocket genius to figure that out. But whoever done it over there, we can definitely tell you, was not smart. So at this point, that details the repairs to this, adding this plug, and then the other half, which is right here, I will be adding under the truck. I might film it, I might not, but this particular video is getting long enough, so I'm going to stop this one right here, because this one did detail the repairs. I did have to change my plan a bit because I didn't get the right stuff, my mistake, but I think I did a pretty solid repair, and a pretty safe one at that. It's not ideal. It should have been soldered and shrink tubed, but this is all I have to work with right now. But there is ways of doing the repairs right when you don't have everything and you've got very limited to work with. This is a good way right here of doing a solid repair and doing a safe repair as well. So I'm gonna get filming the next video, which will be part 3, and I'll get this one downloading while I'm filming the other one, and that'll be finishing this up, getting this thing loomed and ready to rock and roll for the install. So, but I would also, one last thing before I take off, I would like to give a shout out to Pete Anderson, the automotive YouTuber from Aussieland, Australia. He's the one that actually kind of helped shed some light on how to do stuff like this. Now, it's not a repair that I know he would do, but a lot of this stuff, I got the ideas from him, especially using the multimeter to check continuity and things like that, along with the soldering and the shrink tubing. I got a lot of that from him. I did pick it up from a lot of others, such as Eric the Car Guy and a few others that are out there. You know who you are. But I like Pete Anderson's videos on doing electrical wiring repair and wiring loom restorations, especially on his 50s era Plymouth and his XC Falcon, the bikes that he's been doing. I would like to put a big shout out to him and thank him for putting out all that information for restoring these old wiring harnesses, because that's where I got a lot of the ideas to do this. Now, like I said, I know this is probably something he wouldn't do, but for sure, I'd like to thank him for shedding some light on some of the tools and techniques he used on doing this as well. So, but when I do the Ford's wiring harness, it will be done to better standards than this. This is a time crunch. I need to get it in the truck so I can drive it. It is my primary means of transportation. So I've been down now 3 days without it. So at this point, I can throw this in right now if I wanted to, but I'm not. I'm going to do things a little, do things a lot better, wrap it, and all that stuff. So that'll be the next video. Again, thank you, Mr. Anderson from Australia, and have a good one.